Welcome to Over a Barrel. I'm Matt McLean. He's Patrick DeHaan, and thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure that you like and restream and subscribe and all the different things that you could do between Spotify and our video on YouTube, the GasBuddy channel. We are literally everywhere, kind of like gas stations. They're like just about everywhere, just all over the place. So
there's not enough in the low gas prices, though. They aren't quite everywhere.
You're not wrong at all. And hi, Patrick. How are you?
Good morning. I'm terrific, Matt. It's another day. Summer is here now, right? First holiday of the summer is behind us. And
yes,
gas prices are still going down.
Yes, that is a good thing all the way around. I saw where you were posting prices under $3 a gallon.
Yep.
And I got all excited until I went to GasBuddy.com. And none of the stations within, a arm's shot of where I am are below $3 a gallon, unfortunately. But I'm sure they'll get there eventually.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that. In fact, I think that's a great segue here to start it.
Absolutely.
Let's pull up some of those low prices here. Yeah, there you go. 25 states, Matt, this morning where you can buy gasoline for less than $3 a gallon. Now, these are the lowest prices in every state. So, by the way, if you're in Mississippi saying, where the heck is $2.65? Well, it's there somewhere. You can go to MississippiGasPrices.com or check the GasBuddy app. You may find it is closer to you. But yeah, look at all these states here that you can fill up for less than $3 a gallon, and more states will be joining soon. So there's good news, Matt, is the number of states 25 where you can buy gas at a station for below $3. That number may jump to 30 or 35 here as we get closer to July 4. And by the way, look at this. We have our first state back below $3 a gallon. I'm just waiting on Oklahoma to join next. They're getting close. $3.05 a gallon, $3.005.
When do you think California will get under $3 a gallon?
Wow, you really like pouring salt in the wound, don't you? Well, let's check California here. Well, the good news there for Californians is that, look at California. There is, $5.05. They're going to fall back under $5 a gallon here in the next week. So California, though, low carbon fuel standard, cap and trade, highest taxes, special blend of gasoline. But the good news, Matt, I think California could drop into the mid fours here. Maybe by July 4, it'll probably take a little longer. But even California is going to see a nice big decline. Look at that. Down a penny from yesterday, down 4 cents from a week ago, down 11 cents from the last month. And look at even just a little lower, 0.2 of a penny below last year. So not a good way to start summer, Matt.
I have a question, and it's one that you may not be able to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Oh boy.
If we removed California and their pricing, what would the average for the rest of the 49 states be as far as a gas price? Because to me, well over $5 a gallon or $5.05 as of today seems to skew the national average, because so many other states are not even, are they the only state that's above $5?
Yeah, they are the only state above $5 by a long shot.
So what do you think that the average would be? Hawaii is close, right?
7 cents a gallon lower. It'd probably be like $3.49 a gallon or so, Matt. So California is a big contributor. They have over 10,000 gas stations in California. I think it is still the number one state when it comes to the amount of gas stations. But
yeah,
let's look at this. Metro areas below $3. Oh boy, look at that.
Oh my goodness.
Alexandria, Louisiana wins at $2.77 a gallon today, Matt. I wish I was closer, but look at that. All of the top 25 markets, the metro areas, all below $3 a gallon. And there's going to be more that join as well. That's the good news here, is that we get closer to July 4. Heck, it's not even June yet. We're talking about July 4. But Matt, there is good news in that prices are dropping. They're going to continue to drop. In fact, the other thing too, the other thing I tweeted out this morning that's really exciting is for those who need diesel. We don't often talk about diesel, do we?
No, we don't. And the reality is, if without it, we would be in serious trouble on store shelves of every product that you see on a store shelf. It doesn't matter if it's groceries or clothing or a weed eater. It's all arriving by diesel.
It is.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's something we should probably bring up into that conversation more than. And most of the time, I've seen a disparity where sometimes when gasoline is really cheap, diesel is the exact opposite. So, what's up with even that?
Well, there's been a lot of technological improvement in diesel. Not so much in the last couple of years, but really compared to 10 or 20 years ago when diesel was consistently cheaper. Now, keep in mind, diesel and gasoline are completely different fuels, right?
Right.
Diesel is more fuel the economy, right? Construction equipment, trains, buses, right? Heavy commercial stuff uses diesel, whereas consumers, everyone, most consumers are gasoline. So there is a difference there. Diesel and heating oil now are essentially the same thing. So in winter, when areas of the northeastern United States use heating oil, a lot of that impacts the price of diesel. But something really notable is about to happen here in the next, we'll call it 3 days here. By the time we speak next, Matt, the price of diesel, which today is at 3.84 a gallon, is going to drop to its lowest level in over 2 years. All we need is another 4 cent a gallon decline. Diesel's already been declining for the last month. If you look at a chart, it's been basically going straight down. So that's the good news. Cheapest diesel in the last couple of years, and gasoline prices going down. I don't think there's really anything to be pessimistic about this morning.
Do you remember several years ago? I think I remembered sending you a price point of a photo of diesel, and it was like $5 and something a gallon. And here in the Midwest, that is insane.
Yeah.
But then there was such a huge disparity between that and regular gasoline. It was like what $2 or $3 per gallon difference. And I remember sending you
Yeah.
that photo, going, what in the world is happening here? Because while I have seen the price difference between diesel and gasoline, I had never seen. I mean, that's, to me, that's extreme. $2 and $3 per gallon difference between diesel and regular gasoline to me seems like a. I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah,
Truthfully,
let me kind of give you a crash course here on some of these reports that we look at that can explain some of that, Matt. I'm going to share the report that we analysts look at on a weekly basis. It's pretty boring here. If you just look at this as a consumer, it's like this is really boring. Here's a number that we watch really carefully, and people should take note. Gasoline production. 10 million barrels of gasoline production for the week ending May 24. So this is pretty recent. Look at distillate. Distillate is diesel and heating oil. Distillate is middle of the barrel products. Gasoline's a light product. So if you look at distillate production, it's half of gasoline. And so, back in 2022, when diesel prices skyrocketed, it was because the economy just couldn't keep up. Americans were spending,
right?
right? And trucks couldn't be dispatched quickly enough to refill store shelves, right? People were buying stuff. And just construction, right? The economy was reopened. So what happened? We took a jump start. And because all this government money was floating around from both, Trump days and Biden days, they were just kind of handing out money to businesses here, survive, there was a lot of money injected into the economy, and that created a lot of demand. The problem with that is if you look here, because distillate production is only half of that of gasoline, distillate, which includes diesel and heating oil, is a little bit more subject, to the
Right.
fact that there's not as much being produced. So it's more subject to volatility if there's a lot of commerce and heavy industry demand. And a lot of this, why is gasoline production so much higher? Well, gasoline has been the number one product, right? Diesel demand has always been lower. And so refineries have always been set up to process more and produce more gasoline than diesel. So what happened? Russia, and this kind of goes into what goes into a refinery, Matt. We've talked about this before, that a lot of American refineries process more heavy fuel, but they still have to produce. They still produce a lot of gasoline. Anyway, point being that back during Russia's invasion, Russia produces a lot of heavy oil. The price of that heavy oil skyrocketed. Plus, a lot of the imbalances from all that consumer spending that I mentioned pushed diesel
Yep.
demand up significantly, which impacted the price of diesel much more than gasoline. Anyway, this report is kind of a very boring report if you're most people. But the other thing that's interesting here, Matt, if I can highlight it here, Refineries operated at 94.3% of their capacity last week. And we talk about refinery glitches and outages. 94.3% of their capacity, there's not a whole lot of breathing room or margin of error there. If a refinery goes down, especially a big one, just imagine a very high stakes game. And if a refinery goes down, it's pretty critical. In fact, I'll share that 94%, as I quickly load this slide, here's utilization, another pretty boring graphic, but people should be educated about this. 94%, these are all the refinery run rates. If we look back here, going back to
So
2023.
there, translation into you or myself or consumer, basically, you're saying that the distillery, refineries,
Only
not
with the
distilleries,
distillery.
distillery. I'm in Kentucky at the moment, and
Over a
apparently
barrel, yeah.
we distill everything here. If it sits long enough, it's going to get distilled here. So
Oil refinery in Kentucky.
so at 94.3%, what you're basically saying is that refinery is operating basically with 94% of its capacity.
This is a U.S. average, is that refineries are using 94.3% of their capacity, which if we look back here, Matt, this over the month of May, we started May 88.5%, 90.4, 91.7, 94.3. A higher number is meaning that more gasoline and diesel and jet fuel and stuff like that is being produced. So that's good. Compare it back, by the way, to February when demand is relatively low. Refineries were only utilizing about 80% of their capacity. So 94% is the highest number absent. Look at some of the Christmas weeks here, 93%. It's actually the highest number since August of last year, right here. The week ending August 18th saw 94.5. So these numbers matter, something an analyst like I look at on a weekly basis, because it tells us our refineries churning out product. And it's a good sign that we're at 94%. That means refineries are really cranking up output. And again,
But is it sustainable?
Yeah, it is sustainable.
Okay.
And actually, if you want to see something really wild, if you go back and look at different regions of the country, Matt, there are times that various refineries in different areas of the country, like now look at this. This is refineries in the Midwest.
98.6 body temperature.
Look at that. And by the way,
That's impressive, actually.
Look at September of last year, by the way.
How do you get above 100?
Midwest operated at an average utilization of 100.6%. Now, you might be saying you can't operate beyond 100%. Well, there is
That's where my mind is.
Refinery gain, right? Where you're getting a little bit more out of the process than you're putting in. And so you can see weeks that are slightly over 100. But bottom line is, Matt, these high numbers are good for consumers because it means refineries are running. But it also means that if a refinery goes down, there's not a whole lot of spare capacity that others have to improve supply. Right. So that's why this report is something that we look at on a weekly basis, because it's critical to knowing the balances of supply and demand.
All right. So this is a good thing. Does this give us the opportunity to, and I know gasoline has a shelf life and it isn't all that long, especially when you blend ethanol into it. It kind of, you got to use it up. What is the shelf life? Like 60 days or something when that gasoline starts separating and stuff like that?
Well, it's usually more than 60 days. And it really depends on the environment at which it's stored, the volatility,
Valid point.
Hot, cold, right? If you're flipping, you can introduce things like condensation and the stability. That's what's critical, right? That's why your fridge, if you continue to get warm and colder and freeze, right? Refreezing is not a good thing. So it's just about the stability of gasoline. Personally, I've had gasoline that probably is a year old that still runs. Good. Right? It's been stabilized. There are products to stabilize the breakdown, right, of the components in gas.
Fuel stabilizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, that you buy off the store shelf for your own personal tank or your generator or lawnmower gas or whatever.
Slowing down the breakdown in those chemical bonds, right? Because gasoline will varnish over time. So there's products out there, but I mean, it does vary on how it's stored, but it usually is several months at least.
So the main question that I've got is, we're now essentially the hurricane season, the start of it.
Yeah.
We have record high water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico right now for this time of year. And there is a large blob of record high temperatures across the hurricane belt, if you will, of the Atlantic Ocean between Africa, the Caribbean, and the U.S. So this could potentially be quite an ominous hurricane season, and I'm not standing out on a limb for that. This is what the National Hurricane Center and our friends over in Colorado, they operate independently of the government, the National Weather Service, and they're both saying, yeah, this is not going to be a normal year. It's going to be ridiculously active. Does this capacity give the refineries a little bit of extra storage room? I mean, is there a place to store a little extra gasoline should we have an issue with a hurricane, especially going into the Gulf of Mexico, where it could minimize major disruptions as far as fuel availability across portions of the South?
Do we have any extra storage? Well, the good news, the Gulf Coast is the refining hub of the U.S., right?
Right.
That's why a hurricane season is such a challenge for those areas. But it also means, as being the mecca for refineries, is that there's a lot of storage, because a lot of refineries need a lot of storage to store that intermediate product before it gets into your tank. So yeah, there's, if we look at stocks of gasoline, things are above average, actually, compared to, I think, by the way, if anyone wants kind of a summary of some of the data that I just mentioned about the EIA, which comes out on a weekly basis, I'll share the GasBuddy blog.gasbuddy.com. You can get a basic update here if you go to blog.gasbuddy.com. If we go into the information here, we basically summarize it this way. The good news, Matt, is that gasoline inventories last week did increase by 2 million barrels. The critical part here is taking a look there. At
Right.
the current level, inventories are up almost 13 million barrels, which is almost 6% higher than last year at this time. The one kind of caveat is that we're still a little bit below the 5-year
But
average. So
but look at the Gulf Coast. You see that the plus 3.2 million is, I'm assuming, 3.2 million
million
barrels.
barrels. Yeah, they're up
Yeah.
3.2 million barrels in the last week. Now, the Gulf Coast tends to see bigger increases or decreases, right? Because the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf Coast is an area, a significant export market. A lot of these, for example, if I look at the exports here, Matt, total exports, U.S. companies exported almost 11 million barrels a day of oil and petroleum products, things like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. So, that's a
Wow.
significant number. And that's why the Gulf Coast tends to see bigger increases and decreases, because they have a larger share of refining capacity.
I'm literally leaning forward in my chair. This is for me. It's interesting. I know for a lot of folks, and the reason why I'm suggesting the interest in it is because we have a potential for such an active hurricane season. I think I just tapped my microphone. My apologies to those of you listening, but we need the extra inventory and all of the extra stuff there. Because if we have multiple hurricanes, we have multiple issues, as is the prediction. And again, I'm not standing on a limb by that. I'm literally just basically following the lead there of the National Hurricane Center's predictions. This could prove to be invaluable. You probably won't stop any kind of service disruption completely, but to have a little bit of extra anything at this point, I would think at the first week of hurricane season, this is kind of an important aspect.
Yeah, it is, Matt. And if you look there on your screen, you can see the total stocks of gasoline for what we call Pad 3. That's an acronym that stands for Petroleum Administration for Defense District, basically a relic of World War II. They sliced the country up to look at what supply and demand were in each one of these different regions. There are 5 different pads. The Gulf Coast is Pad 3. But looking at this chart over time, you can see that there's kind of a general long-term trend up. And now we're kind of holding in this mid 75 to 100 million barrels. So, if you go down to all the numbers here, that's a lot of numbers.
Mhm.
85 million barrels is, I mean, it's actually declined a bit here. But looking at last summer, let's see here. This is the month of the year, I think. Yeah, so this is the month of the year. We can tend to see that the number last year,
Usually higher
highest
in the
in the
summer.
beginning and the ending.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I see that.
in 2020, you can see 2020 is kind of the rogue year where there's a 90 million barrels. It was the only time that inventories in the Gulf Coast swelled above that ever. Yeah, look at that. During COVID, now they've come back down to the low 80s. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Matt, I mean, there's not a saving grace. If they get knocked out for a week, these numbers are going to deplete. Like,
Sure.
look at 2017 for comparison, right? Hurricane Harvey and Irma dropped. Yeah, look at that. That was kind of the exceptional low, 2017 at 77 million barrels. Um, that was the lowest, one of the lower numbers really on here. There is a rogue 77 million barrel number there. But and by the way, if we I'll stop sharing and try and cue this other graphic up.
Mhm.
If we see what refineries can do, it's pretty noticeable. Or excuse me, what hurricanes can do.
Well, and depending upon where landfall takes place, it could be a huge disruption, not just to, let's say it hits the east coast of Florida. That's awful, not great. We never want to see damage or any kind of a disaster. But if it hits the east coast of Florida versus the mouth of the Mississippi, per se, it's a very different perspective, especially with the infrastructure that exists in the Gulf of Mexico itself. You've got a lot of different varieties of versions, a better way of putting it, of disruptions, local versus regional versus a really big hiccup. So
And
what
and
is
and
this?
oh, this is the number you can. I mean, look at the plummet here. This was, I believe, this actually was that extremely cold weather in 2021, Matt. The sub-zero temperatures that hit much of Texas and Louisiana. Look what that did to refining capacity here.
Yeah,
So,
that's case in
and
point
this
right
is
there.
probably, yeah, look, here's Harvey and Irma right here.
Right.
63. So, I mean, this is what a hurricane can do. And by the way, that was truly an exceptional event because this is cold weather here, right?
Hmm.
The sub-zero, I don't you don't see any real other huge massive plummets, right? So
Right.
Hurricane Harvey, I mean, you can tell that it was profound because it shut down a lot of refineries in Houston. So if you look at this, you can generally always, see the major impacts.
How do you remember? Like, I having lived in Tampa for years, hurricanes. They get the names. How do you remember that it was Harvey? I mean, I do remember a tropical storm Faye in 2008 because that was my first interaction in person anchoring
As an
news for a tropical system. But how do you remember that it was Harvey? For goodness sakes.
man, as an analyst, somebody that lived through those days, it's much
Okay.
easier to remember. I mean, Hurricane Harvey, we activated our tracker.
Yeah.
Texas started to dry up because people started to freak out, and that's when me and a colleague went down
To
to
Tallahassee.
yeah, we were embedded with the CERT team, the
State
environmental
Emergency Response Team. Yeah.
team. Yeah, so I mean that was a very distinct memory because Florida,
That's
I
why.
think
Okay.
95% of stations in Florida ran out of fuel because this number right here, right? Refineries were not producing gasoline, and Florida is one of the unique states where gasoline comes in directly from barges from Texas,
Basically on both
Louisiana.
sides of the coast, right? It's not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ports, right? It's all coming through Port
Yeah.
Canaveral, Port Everglades, Port Tampa, all the ports in Florida. And when a hurricane happens, they're all blocked, right? They all go
Yeah.
to condition Zulu, which is a Coast Guard term for basically you're shutting down because conditions do not um, merit the ability
Yep.
to send product in and out. And so Florida is very unique that without those ports, there's no product.
Right. Right. And that
So
becomes
kind
a
of highlighting
very
the
big
uncertainty
problem.
of a hurricane season here is that
So,
this is all very significant.
and as their population grows, they're into the 20 million, 21, 22 million population plus tourism. That can exacerbate, I would think, than even 10, 20 years ago when the population was 10 to 15 million in the state. You get a lot of, I mean, how has the infrastructure kept up with that where the disruption doesn't become catastrophic during a situation like this? Or has it? Have I just jumped onto something that is an area of concern and not realized it?
No, I mean, the good news about the population boom in like areas like Florida, Matt, is that ports can generally handle a lot more barges, right? I'm sure that there has been some intermediate storage capacity added. For example, I think Port Everglades had talked about adding capacity after that sudden foot of rain that they experienced. I think it was last year or the year before, shut down many of the tanks that
It
dispense
was
the
last year.
water, right? And it was the eastern coast of Florida from like I want to say West Palm Beach all the way down to Miami that was impacted
Mhm.
because Port Everglades was shut down. So you learn lessons as you go, just like Hurricane Katrina. Now here's a graphic, Matt, of the flow of gasoline into Florida specifically because Florida is at such high risk. And look at the arrow here. They get a lot of product via
Yeah.
tanker, barge into Port Tampa. There is a pipeline that connects to Orlando. You'll remember that the airport in Orlando briefly had to shut down some operations because there was not enough jet fuel in that pipeline because of the hurricane. The British Airways, some of the overseas airlines that have really big planes had to cancel their flights because they have really big tanks and there wasn't
They
enough.
didn't have enough fuel.
So yeah, Florida is I mean, and here you get, Port Palm Beach, Port Everglades, Port of Miami, Port Tampa, Port Jacksonville, and all this product is flowing in. Now, northern Florida, well, there is, you'll see there the Colonial Pipeline does pull into Georgia. And so you can pull product in northern, if you cut off the panhandle of Florida, panhandle would be okay, but really south of that, there's a lot of gasoline that is
Yeah.
basically all via barge. So that's the risk. But
And your population, the massive population of Florida is in central Florida as well as southern Florida. I mean, the panhandle has a respectable tourism, but the population just simply isn't there. It's all in that I-4 corridor as well as in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. You've also got Fort Myers in that area as well.
yeah,
But
you need a
I
lot
mean,
more gasoline to your point. I mean,
and that's coming in by barge. It's not
right.
coming in by pipeline. It's coming in by
There's less
barge.
breathing room now, right? And that's why events like Hurricane Harvey back in 2017, if you had that today, that would be even more problematic because there's
Yeah.
probably a couple more million, maybe a couple more million people more in Florida today than there were back in 2017.
Oh, there's, I believe, probably 5 to 6 million more people at this particular point than the population. I may be off by a little bit, but the state has been exploding in growth, and their tourism has been setting a record. And of course, you always have to take that into consideration because you need gas to get out of the state, which is also a problem.
A quick check shows about an increase of almost 2 million in
Yeah.
population from 2017. Florida has almost 23 million people now. Back
Yep.
then they had about 20, almost 21. So it's a big number. But yeah, so this, we're just highlighting one aspect. I think last episode we talked about how Arizona is also susceptible to this for similar reasons. Arizona, a population boom as well, right? People like sunshine, they like warm weather. The problem in Arizona's case is there isn't a single refinery in the state of Arizona, and they're at the end of two pipelines, one that comes from Texas and the one that comes from California. And it's California where the challenges exist, right? If a California refinery goes down. So there's a lot of these unique situations, Matt, where, if a refinery goes down again, that's why it's much more problematic now is that you look at those utilization rates that I showed you,
Yep.
and there's not much margin for error, right? There's not much breathing room, especially as population has been moving to these areas that they're rushing to catch up on infrastructure. Look at the amount of highways they're building in Florida and in Texas, right? The infrastructure follows the population and it generally lags.
Almost always lags, for sure. It's as if they add an extra take Tampa, for example. And listen, the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, I've got friends that work there, spokespeople and whatnot that have been there for years. Love them. They do work hard. But building roads, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not easy. There's a lot of environmental studies, just a lot of stuff has to go into
Yeah.
it. So they do work hard, but you build an extra lane onto an interstate. It's usually about 5 to 7, 10 years behind what the actual demand is. So while it does alleviate congestion, it doesn't really fix the problem. So then they have to automatically go back in. Okay, now what do we do? So now they're building another bridge across the Tampa Bay waters itself to connect. That's just one example to connect the St. Petersburg and Tampa area because they need more lanes. So they're doing that, and they're adding lanes all the time. Does it ever fix the problem? No, because people are moving in. And that's it's a good problem to have, but it's also a frustrating problem to have in situations like that.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. But having said that,
it
at least
is.
gas prices are going down for now in a majority of these areas. So we'll knock on wood that the infrastructure, we've talked about it. Just to throw up another graphic here, I just wanted to highlight, there's so much being politically said about this issue. Just to point out facts of the matter, we're looking at gas prices here, Matt, versus a month ago. The red is an increase. Colorado is an area that price cycles now too. So I think it's just looking at the dates. But look at all the blue here. A lot of states, most
Yeah.
states are seeing gas prices in some cases. Look at Utah, down 37 cents a month ago. California's hard hit, but when it comes to relief, they're seeing some of the most of it. All these states
Gosh,
are seeing a big drop in prices. And
I mean,
yeah,
30,
they're
31
only
cent.
Colorado's like the only
Wow.
okay, there's a couple here, and we'll call this almost negligible change, only a couple cents.
Couple pennies, yeah. But I
But
mean,
yeah,
California, for example, I mean, 31 cents. I mean, that would have put their price at like 540 or so, like a little bit
it
less
was,
than.
yeah, it
That's
was about
insane.
it was 540. But look at the West
That's
Coast areas, Matt. Look, as goes California, as goes the West, because so many of the California refineries supply Nevada, is supplied by California, Arizona, supplied by California, Oregon, supplied by California. Washington has a couple refineries, but the good news is the West Coast has been an area that has probably seen some of the, bigger movers. In fact, if we do a county, we show a change from the last month. Where is all the relief happening? There you go, out west.
Yeah.
And where are the
Out west,
prices?
and
It looks like the
yeah.
Plain State's getting hit, but yeah, out west is where a lot of the relief is.
But like Missouri and Arkansas, portions of Tennessee, Texas, Kansas, it looks like the price is going down there. But in a place like Kentucky, it looks like prices, well, other than the Jackson Purchase area, the far western portions of Kentucky, it looks like it's going up in adjacent to Illinois and Ohio and Indiana.
And by the way, if anyone wants to check what I'm looking at right now, the link in the bottom of your screen, prices.gasbuddy.com, you can find all these different counties, how much you're up or down. Look at Esmeralda, Nevada, down 33.3 cents a gallon in the last month. So shout out to anyone living out in what did I just say? Esmeralda, Nevada. It's, Clark County. What's Clark County? Look at Las Vegas, down 32 cents. By the way, Matt, our prognosis, I can't even say the word, we're forecasting, we'll just say it that way because I'm going to probably stumble on a little bit more, is by
I do
July
that
4,
sometimes.
we'll probably be July 4 is a month away. We could be down in the 340s by July 4.
I hope that is what happens. Can we get 99 cents a gallon? I ask that on occasion. I'd like it.
I actually had somebody ask me, will any state get to $1.99 a gallon
Ooh,
this year? No.
that was my other number.
No, I
Ugh.
don't think, when you think about it, oil prices are still too high. The other thing too is gasoline taxes in most states have gone up. So,
Yeah.
but look at
Yeah.
oil's down, so we'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, that's from our friends at CNBC. There is your exact thing. Now here's the question. As you have pointed out to me last week, and I learned lessons. You and I have been interviewing. I have been interviewing you for a lot, 14 years or so. So I still learn things from you, though. So last week you were telling, I learned something new when it came to the wholesale price of gasoline versus, the crude oil price and some other aspects. I was thoroughly impressed on all of that. But for now, it looks like wholesale gasoline is slowly going up. Do you think that will bring a little bit of a slowdown to the decrease at this point, or you think this is just kind of a fluke?
Well, Matt, if you scroll down there, let's see your chart and go back. Let's see a month chart.
All right, let's do 1 month.
So no,
Boom.
I don't I don't think that little blip today is going to do a whole lot just yet. So, and if you look at the totality of the chart, there, starting out at about 260 a gallon. By the way, this is the wholesale price. This is the price before taxes, transportation. So if you're wondering why the heck the wholesale price is 240, why am I paying 356?
Right.
It's because it doesn't include anything, transportation, pipelines, taxes, all of that. But yeah, no, I'm not worried about that little blip. Hopefully that is just, a temporary thing, but good news.
Let's hope.
We're going to
Well,
start June here shortly and
yeah.
lower gas prices to boot.
Yeah. So tell me very quickly, where do you see prices going as we throw a little bit of a tip out there for folks watching? And for those of you listening on Spotify, it just literally says check the GasBuddy app when you get to about a quarter of a tank to make sure you know where prices are lower. Where do you see prices going for the next 7 days or so?
I think downward. And Matt, that's a great tip. I was in Western Indiana yesterday, and I fired the GasBuddy app up. You would not believe I saw 356, 365, 384, all within. I just stopped sooner rather than later. And when prices are coming down, by the way, there's a lot of that variety. But I do think next time we talk in a week, we could be low 350s, upper 340s.
Ooh,
California will be
I'm
below
liking that.
$5 a gallon next time we talk. And there probably will be a couple more states that are below $3 a gallon. Looking at you, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, we should see 3 states that are below $3 next time we talk.
I from your lips to everybody's ears, I guess is a better way of putting it. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you watching and listening, again, subscribe, follow,
All the magical happens, right?
all the stuff. Yeah. There are so many different variations as to how you can listen or watch us. Just subscribe /like/follow/ whatever it is that you happen to need to do to make sure that you keep following us. And on occasion, we do live over a barrel podcast as well when it warrants. Patrick mentioned the Port Everglades. We did that last year. We went on the air live multiple times because of that, because the shortage was so serious. So we, on occasion, we'll do some live stuff, and we may do some stuff this summer. We'll find out what happens. But make sure that you join us right here again for our very next episode. Thanks for joining us for this one. And of course, we will talk again coming up very soon.